Have you ever heard of Baha'i and the Prophet Baha'u'llah, born as Mirza Hussein Ali? Um, no. I don't even know what you just said, to be completely fair with you. Yeah, same. I really don't know anything about them. So, wait, why did you bring it up in the first place? I don't know, start conversation, I guess? Weird. Did you really just have a still frame image as your intro? Yeah, but I mean, I had to do something. It was gonna be cringy anyway, so whatever. God. Welcome, boys and girls, and I'm going to be your Morgan Freeman today on the religion known as Baha'i, so you don't fail this part on your test when it comes to Mr. Cooter's class. So anyway, Baha'i is a religion that the common person walking on the street has never heard of, and to be completely fair, I had no clue about it either. But should we? Well, I'll just tell you about it anyway. It all starts off in 1817 when a boy named Mirza Hussein Ali is born into one of the wealthiest families in all of Iran.
Where is Iran?
I know it's in the Middle East, but I'm not sure.
Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, so it's going to be, I think,
somewhere in the Middle East, I think one of these three.
This area?
That's a close start. Where?
In case you were wondering, this is Iran, and at the time it was called Persia, so that's when we refer to it from now on. He was born technically in Persia. Anyway, getting back to Mirza Hussein. So, he had a limited education based mainly on Islam, but knew details about other religions and their practices far more than any person in the wealthy class should really know about. It's really kind of a boring fact, but it's important to know because that's what Mirza would use to justify his legitimacy. How could he possibly know all these things if God hadn't told him? There's no real answer to that, and he didn't act on his knowledge until he was 27, when he learned of the Bab. The Bab is going to be a bit confusing, so try to pay attention to this part. So, the Bab was actually a young merchant who one day said he had a message from God that would transform the life of humanity. At the time, Persia was in a crisis, so hearing about this brought flocks of people to his cause, which no one even really knew yet. But the merchant said that they were to prepare for the manifestation of God, which is going to be, kind of a huge thing that a lot of people would probably want to see. But this God would usher in the new age of peace and justice that every religion promises, and he would be called Baha'u'llah. So, what's the point of me talking about Mirza in the first place if this Bob guy seems to be doing everything related to the religion right now? Well, let me just set that apart for you. So, this merchant, the Bob, all he really does is proclaim that he has a message from God that there's going to be a prophet. That's really all he does. Mirza is going to be that prophet of Baha'i. Spoiler alert, sorry if I spoiled it for you. So the founder is still technically Mirza, but the beginning movement was started by that merchant in the time of crisis. So that's confusing, I know. There you go. The merchant made the announcement that there'd be a prophet. He didn't have teachings. He didn't do anything like that. He just said that someone's going to become Baha'u'llah, and they'd be the actual founder of the religion, if that makes any sense. And if you're wondering why I'm stressing that so hard, it's because most likely it's going to be a question for a quiz. So just remember, Baha'u'llah made the religion. He is the founder. Write that down. He made the religion, guys. That's going to be a question, so just know it. So anyway, back to Mirza. He would become a follower of the Bab when he was 27 years old, but never actually met the Bab. The Bab heard of him, of course, because, he's a wealthy guy, and hearing that a wealthy guy is one of your followers is probably a good thing to know. The two would end up talking, though, through pen pal, and, they'd just write a letter, he'd write one back, and that went on for around 2 years, until the Bab was executed for saying he had a message from God, and that really doesn't go over too well, as we've learned from Islam in this class. So after the Bab was executed, Mirza would be arrested when he was 29 years old, as ordered by the Shah of Persia. While Mirza was in there, he had a lot of time to reflect on what he had learned throughout his life, including what he knew of other religions. Other people who had followed the Bab were simply tortured and executed, but because of Mirza's wealthy family, he got off relatively easy, 2 years in prison, and, a little banishment from Iran. Going back to his prison time, though, he had spent more time with other followers of the Bab, which I had said earlier, but most of them ended up dying. When he was there, he taught them how to chant prayers, which were even heard by the Shah himself, and this is basically the moment where he became a good leader, and basically was the foundation of him becoming a prophet. On top of this, it's said that Mirza would receive visions from God during his time in prison of how he should lead the followers of the Bab. After leaving prison, he was exiled, like I said before as well, from Iran and went to Iraq. While in Iraq, he found other followers of the Bab who hadn't been executed because, they're not in Iran. When he found them, he proclaimed that he was Baha'u'llah and began teaching them what he believed was his message from God about other religions and how every religion is right. They all believe that every single religion is right in its own way. So basically what he taught and what Baha'i still teaches is that Baha'i is a religion where they accept all others and look for the unity in humanity and people as a whole. What that really means is that the believers of Baha'i say there should be equality between sexes and all races, along with harmony between religion and science. So science and religion can't be opposed because they are the aspects of the same truth. The Baha'i religion also believes every other religion is correct and legitimate, like not just the little things, like, oh yeah, we agree with that, like we lynch off of their religion. No, they believe they are all legitimate and has the same spiritual foundation despite their obvious differences and teachings. The believers of Baha'i say that every single prophet is legitimate, even ones like Muhammad, Abraham, or even Jesus. They don't just include Baha'u'llah as the only prophet. They believe every single one is a disciple from God, and Baha'u'llah is just the most recent of all of those prophets. Don't get me wrong, though, there are still differences between Baha'i and those religions. First being, they don't have any priest or clergy, no ceremonies for initiation, no sacraments, and no worshiping rituals. There are only 3 Baha'i rituals: obligatory daily prayers, reciting the prayer for the dead at a funeral, and the simple marriage rite. Things that are similar to what we're used to is they still obviously have prayer, they still have houses of worship, and they still have holidays. But another huge teaching for the Baha'i is the revelation of Baha'u'llah, where he says that our purpose is to know God and attain his presence and progress spiritually by serving our fellow human beings. All good things do come to an end, though, when Baha'u'llah died in 1892, but he had chose his successor, Abdul Baha. Later on, he ended up dying too in 1921, but then his successor came, Shoghi Effendi, who was named the guardian and appointed head of the Baha'i faith until he died in 1957. The reason I brought up that line of succession in the first place is because Shoghi Effendi had something to say about why their religion was structured this way. He says, "It is not sufficient for a believer to merely accept and observe the teachings. He should, in addition, cultivate the sense of spirituality, which he can acquire chiefly by the means of prayer, laws, and institutions. As viewed by Baha'u'llah, can become really effective only when our inner spiritual life has been perfected and transformed. Otherwise, religion will degenerate into a mere organization and become a dead thing." Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this isn't as painful for you to watch as it is for me.